I'm going to call this meeting to order because we have a lot to accomplish. So I'd like to call this regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen to order on June 6th, and it is 7:01. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, first item on the agenda is the first Selectmen's report, and that's me, so I'm going to read it. So the weekly COVID positivity rate as of May 31st was 17.84%. That mirrors the state numbers and are the highest numbers since January, but fortunately hospitalizations still remain low. A noise abatement feasibility study for the New Canaan branch of the Metro North Line was approved and a consultant was chosen. The selected consultant will be managed by WestCog staff and an external project manager in cooperation with Darien, New Canaan, and Stamford municipalities. On Tuesday, May 24th, from 9 a.m. until 2 p.m., Darien first responders, emergency management professionals, and related administrators participated in a 2022 Emergency Planning and Preparedness Initiative. This exercise, focused on hurricane preparedness, was designed to provide an opportunity for the town departments and agencies involved in emergency management to review plans, identify partners, and discuss possible scenarios and challenges, along with potential solutions. And one of the key outcomes of this exercise was to create an action plan for the 5 days leading up to the event and the actual landfall of a major storm. A mediation session was held on May 25th between Eversource, DOT, and the town of Darien. Eversource submitted a planting plan for the property owned by DOT along Little Brook Road. The town is pushing for a more robust planting plan and made its request clear during mediation. A strong effort by the town to get additional plantings for the residents in the neighborhood will continue unabated as the mediator works towards a settlement. On Sunday, May 29th, the Monuments and Ceremonies Commission honored two Darien brothers, Philip A. Morehouse and Alan R. Morehouse, with a Veterans Street sign. A brief ceremony took place on Norotan Avenue in front of the Fitch Home for Soldiers Memorial. These brothers fought together during World War II. Alan lost his life on D-Day, June 6, 1944. That's today, 78 years ago. Philip came back to Darien. He lived and he served his community and his nation for the rest of his life here. I want to thank Lucy Berry, Middlesex history teacher, for coordinating this recognition. The Memorial Day Parade was held on May 30th, and the Monuments and Ceremonies takes the lead on putting this parade together. And it's a tremendous community event, and I want to thank the commissioners and in particular Chairman Terry Gaffney for that. It was so nice to see all of the marchers and all of the residents, and as somebody pointed out, and I think I agree, that half the residents marched and half the residents watched, so I think that's a good ratio. I want to thank the Air Force for supporting the town's request for a flyover of a C-130 jet, and many people stayed to honor deceased veterans in a ceremony that took place in Spring Grove Cemetery immediately following the parade. As the town of Darien continues to mourn recent losses from suicide, we have taken the initiative to create a mental health task force to address the needs of our community. Currently, the task force consists of multiple town leaders, including myself, the Darien Human Services and Health Directors, the Chief of Police, the Superintendent of Schools, Board of Ed members, clergy, and mental health professionals from local agencies. We have been advised by experts from the Child Guidance Center and members of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention on the best way to assist our community at this time. Darien is considered to be in an acute post-vention phase following the recent deaths. The experts informed us that our priorities during this phase should be to communicate frequently with the public and provide resources of support. Those resources can be found on the town's webpage under the Mental Health Resources link and will be updated on an ongoing basis. The longer-term goal will be to provide education, suicide prevention, strategies, and to access the overall mental health needs of our residents. The task force is the first step in addressing the crisis we are experiencing in Darien. And I want to thank Marcy Minnick, who has volunteered or offered her services to be our representative for the Board of Selectmen. After the recent mass shootings, in particular the shooting at the elementary school in Texas, I have heard from concerned residents. The Board of Education is continually assessing school security, but I want to take this opportunity to assure the community that the town, the Board of Ed, and the police department will be meeting to evaluate current school security. Kate Bush, as you can probably have noticed, is not here today, but she is on the phone. So Kate and Jen Traneski are presently attending the annual Government Finance Officers Conference. Kate was previously on the executive board of GFOA, and Jen is currently serving on the Governmental Budgeting and Fiscal Policy Committee, which works to establish best practices. So I want to thank Linda and Karen actually for helping us this evening. The Darien Foundation has gifted the town with a heritage trail which consists of 9 markers throughout town at historic points of interest. This weekend, 4 of the markers will be unveiled. So on Friday, we have at 9 a.m. on June 10th, the Battle of Post Road in Nearwater Farm. And if you would like to see that unveiling, I would recommend parking over at Hinley School. At 10 o'clock, the unveiling will be at the Norotan River Cemetery, and the best place to park is Giovanni's for over there. On Saturday at 9 o'clock, it'll be at Tilly Pond Park. And Saturday at 10 a.m., it'll be at Rings End Landing. So best place to park there is across the bridge on Harbor Road. A swearing-in promotion ceremony was held at the Piedmont Club for officers that have received promotions. And my congratulations on behalf of the board with Sarah Newman, who joined us, and the community went to Allison Hudema, who has been promoted to the rank of captain, Derek Mulcahy, who has been promoted to the rank of lieutenant, and Christopher Jimenez and Stuart Schwenger, Stuart, who have been promoted to the rank of sergeant. This past Saturday, June 4th, I was pleased to help Terry Wood with a flag collection event at Town Hall. This is an annual collection which provides an opportunity for those with worn-out flags to drop them off for proper disposal. And Terry will be holding another collection this coming Saturday at from 10 to 11 outside of the Row 8 Market. So for those of you who have flags, and if you can't make it, you can always drop your flags off here as well as at the entrance to the VFW. I want to thank the Darien Pollinator Pathway for organizing the planting of trees and shrubs at Cherry Lawn Park. I want to thank the Garden Club for their plantings at Tilly Pond Park and the Beautification Commission for the many plantings around town, including the always popular hanging baskets. All of it looks fantastic, and all of our residents really appreciate your efforts there. And lastly, I want to remind everyone to sign up for the town newsletter. And if you want to do that, you have to actually opt in. So you would send an email request to newsletter@dariencT.gov to make sure you get a copy of that. With that, I would like to open it up to board liaison reports, and we'll start with Mike for Blight.
Thank you. We had a Blight Commission meeting on May 11th. We have them once a month. The overview is that there are currently 8 properties on our list that we are either keeping an eye on to see if they're making requested improvements, or we're assessing for fines or setting forth liens. To break it down, there are 2 properties that are on the watch list. 3 are in the process of moving from a fine collection to where we will set liens. And we have one property that's moving towards a fine because they have not cured the issues. We have one property that is coming in for a hearing, and we have one that was in for a hearing, but it appears they're making some progress, so they may not go forward to a fine stage. But this is something that we track and we work on monthly. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Sarah?
So I have two updates for everyone. The first is regarding the Thriving Youth Task Force, which met for the last time in about a week and a half ago, and they will meet again in the fall. They are approaching the end of the first year of a 6-year grant from the Drug-Free Communities, about $625,000. The leaders recently attended a coalition academy focused on reducing youth substance use, focusing on risk factors and environmental strategies such as reducing the barriers to access and maybe modifying policy or changing consequences. And they will meet again in the fall. The second update is for the Henley Homes and Royal Committee. That committee will be meeting later this week, and I believe we'll be looking at recommendation for a construction firm for the projects. And this evening at 8 p.m. the RTM will be meeting, and on the agenda is the vote for the final appropriation. So exciting stuff. I would like to say I did attend that mental health first aid training put on by Allie's office yesterday, and it was phenomenal. So there is another set that is happening in July, and I encourage any resident who has any interest in attending to reach out to Allie Ramstack and attend, because it was phenomenal. So,
great.
Yeah. Thank you.
John?
The IT Steering Committee met on May 19th, and what we've done is we've kind of divided up the work into 4 different pieces or parts. The first one is issue resolution. Jeff Adams, who runs IT for the town, given that he's done that for quite a while, has actually already identified things that he would think about doing differently or wish could be improved. And so rather than trying to reinvent the wheel, we're going to start with his list of issues. He's an expert to see if we can help sharpen those up and maybe get to resolution on some of them. The second group is just around efficiency. And so a lot of the folks on our committee have got professional IT experience with private sector insights into how things work well, and the question is can we leverage any of that to improve things like speed, efficiency, cost, that sort of thing, and leverage that expertise for the town. The third one is citizen service, and the issue there is how can our systems really contribute to an upgrade of the citizen experience with the town, right? This could include more diverse payment options. All the young people, certainly my kids, are paying for things in ways that I never thought possible. The one consistent link is they're still using my money, so that's a link I'm hoping to break, and maybe the IT committee could help me with that. But the real question is that who on the East Coast does that best, has the best IT citizens experience, and what could we learn from that and adopt for this town? And then finally, just this question of outsourcing. That's obviously something that's done a lot in the private sector. What are we doing with our current outsourcing partnerships? What's working well? What isn't? What can we change? I'd also like to kind of understand what other outsource options are out there that we might test or consider. And so the good news is that there are people on the committee who've got expertise doing all the things I just mentioned, and we will try to get some ideas pulled together shortly. The goal is to have some things either at the end of the summer or the first right after Labor Day that we can present to this board and try to move along. But I'm excited about it. A lot of tremendously talented people on that committee, and more to come.
Okay. Marcy?
We have not met since our last meeting. It is a very busy time at Oxridge, the Oxridge Building Committee. As of the 20th of June, they are supposed to be moving all of the old equipment from the current Oxridge building into the new academic building. So the teachers and administration get 1 week to do that. And then the following week, as of the 27th, the old building should be coming down. So I will have more of an update. We meet on Wednesday to make sure that timelines are being met, but so far so good.
So a week is enough?
That's what they say.
That's what they say. Okay. I like that. Okay, next item on the agenda is public comment. Is there anyone here physically who would like to speak? So, Paul, please state your name and your address.
Paul, excuse me, Paul Hendrickson, 97 Hoyt Street. I'm a member of the Board of Finance, but the comments are my own, and I want to keep them strictly factual. And we haven't even seen the presentation, so we don't have any idea what you have in mind. My parents moved here in 1962. A third of the land in Darien was undeveloped. 60 years later, only 3% is undeveloped. In that time frame, at least 3 major purchases were rejected. The Trunley property, which is on the border of Norwalk, which was Red Rose Circle and all those properties. The Duhame property, which is where Avalon is now, and Procaccini, where Kensett is now. And I would consider this, looking at it, an environmental purchase and protecting the environment. And getting down into some factual, the tax base, the Steinkrauses will go off the rolls, but we have 3 major projects coming on the rolls, which should increase our grand list. Also, on our last bond issue, which was for $30 million, we had 8 different bidders and several from major houses. At the current time, we have over $25 million in our general fund, and our tax collection is at a 99.83% averaged over the last 10 years. So those are my comments. I will await Jim Palin and Dan Baumgardner to come up with any financing that may be required. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Any other comments from the public seated? Linda, do we have any comments?
It looked like Dan Baumgardner signed up to.
Oh, no, I thought it was attendance.
Oh,
That's okay.
No.
okay.
My mistake.
That works. Okay. All right, so we'll move on to the next order of business. New business is discuss and take action on a request to hold the 2022 Run with the Saints. And the Run with the Saints, it's an event that takes place every fall. It's been happening since 2016. We did miss a year for COVID. And as you can see from the meeting materials, it has been approved by the Police Commission. Is there any discussion on this?
It will say I've attended several times. It is the parish that we go to, and it's a phenomenal thing. So we appreciate the ability to do that in town.
Great. Any other comments? Okay, may I have a motion to approve? Okay, Sarah moves. Mike seconds. All in favor? Unanimous, Linda. Okay, second item is the discuss and take action on a request to approve the 2022 Push and Pull Parade. We are being asked to approve the Push and Pull Parade, which happens on July 4th. It's adorable. This is the 17th annual parade, and as you can see from the meeting minutes, the Police Commission has approved the closure of Norotan Avenue. Any discussion? I feel like we all participated last year, trying to corral those kids who, anyhow, I digress. May I have a motion to approve? Mike moves. Marcy seconds. All in favor? Okay, unanimous. Terrific. Okay, next item on the agenda is to discuss the potential acquisition of Great Island. So
we did have the fireworks. Did you want to?
that's later.
Okay.
That's after.
Okay.
So we are going to be voting in a week on the purchase of Great Island and the cost of the property, the opportunities it presents, and the fact that most of the residents in town have never seen the property created a need for a presentation in our opinion. So as you review it, Board of Selectmen members, please think of things that you feel, and community, that we should be telling other elected officials and the residents, and share what updates you think we should consider. So before I begin, let me provide a little background on the property and the sale process. Great Island was purchased by the Ziegler family in the 1880s and has remained in the family ever since. It is now controlled by the Steinkraus branch of the family, some of whom live in town. It is a separate and distinct from the property along Long Neck Point, which today is controlled by another branch of the Ziegler family. The properties were first offered for sale in 2018 at $175 million. In July of 2021, the property lines were redrawn and in February, the property was listed for, was put on the market for $100 million. Members of the Board of Selectmen visited the property in March and discussed the town participating in the bidding process. And we eventually offered a purchase price of $80 million in April. The bid was rejected by the sellers, and they pursued other higher bids. Eventually, after being told by the broker and the seller that even higher bids were being pursued by the sellers, the town offered $103 million to secure a contract for the property. To support such a bid, the town employed an independent appraiser to value the property. On a best use basis, to develop as many as 25 homes, each on a two-acre lot, the value was determined to be at least $107,840,000. Contract negotiations then ensued, and a contract was signed on May 23rd. We then began a series of due diligence procedures, including Phase 1 and Phase 2 environmental studies, on-site building engineering evaluations, site evaluation including wetlands restrictions, and the presentation by our landscape architects, which we're about to see. Our town finance department and the Board of Finance are considering bonding alternatives and the impact the purchase may have on the town's bond rating, budgets, and property tax mill rates, as well as the combined impact of school improvements being made at the same time. John Zagrodzky will discuss this during the presentation. So regarding the schedule going forward, so tonight we're going to have the presentation, consider the possibilities and the financial considerations for it. We are hoping that all RTM members will have an opportunity to see the property as soon as possible. On Thursday, there will be a public hearing held where a presentation, this same presentation adjusted for any comments and suggestions that we receive, and a public comment period will be held. On June 13th, a week from today, the Board of Selectmen will vote on this purchase, and on June 14th, the Board of Finance will discuss and take action. During June, committee meetings of the RTM will meet to discuss the purchase, and I will make myself available to answer any additional questions at those meetings. On June 27th, the RTM will vote on the purchase and the appropriation for the purchase of Great Island. In a moment, I'm going to walk us through a presentation, but first I wanted to make a few comments, some personal and some made as your first selectman. The Board of Selectmen is pursuing this purchase of this land because it is the last parcel of size available in town, and it is the most beautiful and unique place in our area of Long Island Sound. I truly believe that. Our plan of conservation and development has identified acquiring open space as a priority for town investment. This property can serve many purposes identified as desired in those extensive surveys that were done. With Darien's current development on the upswing, open space, parkland, and recreational alternatives will not only be desired, but they will be greatly needed. Conservation of this fragile area is important. There's only one chance to purchase Great Island, and unfortunately we do not get a chance to pick timing, right? And we had to bid the price we did to purchase it. As noted in our plan of conservation and development, the town must be ready to act on a purchase when it becomes available. We have no preconceived plan for the ultimate utilization of Great Island. You will see in our presentation some of the possibilities. I like to think that we are purchasing, an empty canvas, and we as town people will be painting this canvas with what our vision is for it. It's exciting. It will require funding, and it will take years. It will take years to take shape. So I do hope we will be able to raise some private funds to assist in needed improvements. We begin by purchasing the property, and then we give ourselves the patience and the time to decide how best to use it. Our benefits will be individual, family, and community oriented. People may move to Darien for the unquestioned quality of our schools and our dedication to constantly improving the educational experience for our children. People stay in Darien for the amenities a coastal community offers. We must continue to invest in both. Great Island will make our lives richer, and I believe our real estate investments will gain in value. In future years, our children and their children will thank us for thinking of them today. So, thank you for listening to that, and now we will go to the presentation.
Can you see?
Yeah. So are we moving over so we can watch
Yes,
there?
I think it would be a great idea.
I can stay with you guys.
Hi, everyone. Wow, it's so terrific to see all these smiling faces. This is my RTM buds. And so I want to thank all of you for joining us this evening, and I want to say a special thank you to Wes Stout and Tom Cross, who are joining us. They are our planning and landscape architects, design firm that helped us create this presentation. So this is actually a painting that we saw. Yes. So this is John Kensett. He lived in Darien. He actually owned Contentment Island. And this is a painting that he did of Long Neck Point. And he was a founder of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, a longtime Darien resident. So this is an aerial view of Great Island. And this photograph was actually taken just a couple weeks ago, so it's very recent. You'll notice great tree cover on this. This is a 30-acre parcel of land. And for the people that I keep forgetting, but the people that are at home can't see me, so I'm going to try to point on the screen, but also note where I am pointing. So on the upper right-hand corner, this is Scott's Cove up here. And then down here below is Ziegler's Cove. And you can see the little white moorings for Ziegler's Cove there. And so this is that same shot, but this green shaded is what the property, the current property lines for this purchase. Okay, and you'll note that on the upper left-hand side, there's the deeded open space. This is marshland and deeded open space down here, a pond and other marshland. Even though that's theoretically on the island, it actually is not part of this property for sale. This small, it's about an acre, 1.2 acres. This entrance here, if you go straight out it, you'll actually cross Goodwives River Road, and you'll go right up onto Rings End Road. So that gives you an idea of where you are, that upper left-hand green entry there. So what is Great Island? Well, it's vast coastal spaces. Right? I think this is this might be actually my favorite photograph. Wes and Tom did a terrific job here. So there's that pond that I mentioned before, and there's your other deeded open space. So it gives you an idea of where we are on the land. Here's another shot of an aerial shot. You'll see here's the main residence here, facing east, and for people at home, that island behind, that's actually Hay Island. And then you're looking at Long Neck Point at the very top right-hand of your screen. That body of land is Long Neck Point. And then if you look really, really carefully, you'll see Manhattan right up here. That far right-hand corner, you have to look really good. I can see it because I'm like 12 inches from the screen. And here are some other pictures of vast coastal spaces. We saw that. Here is the dock. Here is a little beach bungalow and a changing room here on this 60 acres. A lot of people ask, how does this compare to our neighboring communities? So Pear Tree is a 7-acre lot, right? And Weed Beach is 27 acres. So if we look at what's comparable in Fairfield County, we have Greenwich Point Park with 147 acres, a little bit over Todd's Point. We have Waveney Park in New Canaan, which is a little over 300 acres, and then Longshore in Westport at 169 acres. So this is, again, a 60-acre parcel with a beautiful 1.5 miles of coastline, which is very unique. That's for that much. Another beautiful picture, and for those of you at home, that little building that little structure in the middle is Green Ledge Lighthouse, right in the middle. So this is one of the entrances, sweeping drive through the property. Again, this is where those open deeded spaces are. And again, some really, really pretty pictures. If you notice from some of those aerial shots, you'll see the tree canopy there. It is truly tremendous. And you feel the shade when you're there. You feel the breeze, and it's really wonderful. These are large, mature trees, which I learned from Wes are volunteer trees, native volunteer trees. So very nice. This is the Equestrian Center. This is a chateau-style granite building here. We have 18 paddocks in this equestrian facility and 3 apartments above this main building here. And there is a riding ring in the back. So you'll see, if you just remember this little gray behind the equestrian facility, there's a photograph of the interior of that in a future slide. So this is a slide that has the numbers of the different structures, the 9 structures that are on this. And we're going to go to future slides, but you can also always go back and take a look at where they are on the map. And again, Scotts Cove is that body of water on the upper right, and Ziegler's is on your bottom left. Some existing resources, some timeless structures. Again, this is down by the beach, so your beach. This is the greenhouse, and it was called the greenhouse not because it's green, but because it actually had greenhouses coming off of it. This was a big agrarian agricultural area, and when you see the property, you'll see that there's a very, very large, the largest root cellar I've ever encountered in my life. And so these are numbered here, and you can always go back if you want to see where they are, and here's some descriptions of them. This is the main residence. It's 13,000 square feet. It does have two rental units on either side that are currently rented. And beautiful. Here is the Deepwater Dock. Again, this is Ziegler's here. This is a little polo field and a sand ring here with horses actually in it. This is the Norotan Fire Department rescue boat here. The family's been kind enough to let us keep the boat there for over 30 years. So there's that picture. Your upper left is that sand ring that's behind the equestrian facility. That's what it will look like inside. This is a natural amphitheater that's on the property. And again, here are the numbers that correspond to these structures on that other map. And you can get a little bit of an idea about the size of them and what's included in each one of those structures. And this is the old boathouse and launch. Right now it's a storage area, but there was a thriving shellfish, actually scallop business here, and it operated out of this building. So we took a look at what's there, right? We saw beautiful scenery, we saw the existing structures that we could repurpose. So now we have to go to what can we do with Great Island? And so we're going to give you some ideas, but I ask you, we have ideas, but I hope all of you have ideas, and I hope you'll let your imaginations run wild, like within reason though, and that you'll get back to us with some of those thoughts, okay? So this again is that other screenshot, and before I go into what the possibilities are for us and why it's interesting for us, I do want to point out that this was a property that was bid on by developers. And I personally think one of the reasons that it was bid on, one of the interesting aspects of it, is this town sewer line does go to that circle on the upper left-hand corner, of the screen. The town sewer does go into there. So it has two access pipes. So one is built, it's a 2.5-inch pipe that can support 10 to 18 hookups for it. The other pipe that's a little bit larger can support 19 to 57 hookups. So I think that developers found that to be an attractive feature for the property. So
can you just repeat that?
There's a 2.5-inch, get stuck with sewers. There's a 2.5-inch pipe that will support 10 to 18 hookups, and a 3-inch pipe that will support 19 to 57. Okay, so now we're going to go to the next, and again, the reason that we are looking at this is because this property really does fit in with our plan of conservation and development that was done in 2016, and our parks master plan that was done in 2018. This potential purchase fits into that plan very nicely. So what the landscape architects helped us do is helped us to look at this and I think in a really terrific way. And that's that they divided into key zone areas. So this first pink zone that you're looking at, we're going to call this the commons zone. And the next area is going to be this orange circle, is going to be the arts and culture zone. And then our third area, it's actually quite large, is the conservation and education area. And then our fourth is this 1.5 miles of coastal shoreline. So you'll see that obviously they overlap in areas, but that's kind of what we were kind of looking at to divide it up and help understand more what we could do in each one of those zones. So the first zone is the commons area. You'll see that it's closest to the entrance, right? So potential uses. And we are interested in any other ones that you have. Community rooms, Center for Sustainability, pickleball, very popular senior programs, equestrian facilities here, perhaps a seasonal ice rink, festivals, structured and unstructured play. I think unstructured play is very needed. And then our second zone, that arts and culture zone, it also has a lot of possibilities, right? An arts center or an art museum or a different kind of museum, an artist in residence program, a farmer's market, art festival, maybe a wine and food festival, that would be fun, indoor event spaces, outdoor relaxing paintings. I didn't know this, but this is actually a sculptural garden. This, on the left-hand side, the middle photograph, a sculptural garden in New Canaan. And then in our conservation and education area, that third zone, different uses there could be a community garden or a pollinator pathway, Earth Day exhibitions, children's camps, a touch tank. I got my eye on it for right there. Environmental education, bird watching, beekeeping. Bird watching, it's listed here, but it's actually all over the island. It was pointed out to me an eagle's nest. I had no idea they were that big. The nest, not the bird. I knew the bird was big. But you can see this is really a terrific area for our children. And I feel like we live in a coastal community, right? We're in Darien and we live in a coastal community. Let's take advantage of that and let's teach our children what it's like here. We have so many opportunities for that because of where we are, but this property also. And then this fourth zone is your coastal shoreline. Again, that 1.5 miles of coastal shoreline. And we have actually some terrific clam beds up here. I think, coastal stewardship coastal ecology, maybe a discovery walk, different boating. You know, this is a great place for a kayak launch, canoeing here. We have the dock here if you want to take a stroll, enjoy the sunset. You know, a little outlook there would be terrific. Fishing. These photographs on the left-hand side of your screen, this is Todd's Point at the top. This is Cove Beach in Stamford. Todd's Beach, in Greenwich. Cove Beach in Stamford, and then the Inn at Longshore in Westport. So again, that 1.5 miles of dramatic coastline, I think, is really exciting. So that's this portion of the presentation, and I hope you enjoyed it. And now John Zagrodzky is going to go over the financials. Thank you. John, you need that?
Can we go back here?
Yeah.
Thank you, Monica. I have this cool pointer here, so I'm feeling kind of official and well-informed with this. What I want to do here, first I'd like to thank Jim Palin, Chairman of the Board of Finance, for help with these numbers and this analysis. But the purpose of this part of the talk is just to go through some of those numbers and a number of other financial matters to get everybody comfortable with this and to provide a basis for future questions on this. So first thing I want to talk about a little bit is just the contract and some of the financials that are embedded in that, and I'll talk briefly to each one of these points. As Monica mentioned, it's $103 million to acquire this property. There are going to be obviously some small closing costs with that, but it's going to be in that zip code. Once this closes, and we have this set, and by that I mean after 12 days after the RTM approval, we are going to have to make a 1% deposit on that property. A couple other facts about that in terms of appraised and assessed value. As Monica mentioned, we did get an appraisal for the property in April in $108 million zip code, so we feel comfortable based on that professional assessment that the value of the property is in excess of what we're paying now. The assessed value you can see here from October of 2021. An important point is that we do collect about $762,000 in property taxes on that property today. And obviously as municipal property, that is going to go away. We will not have those taxes collected anymore. There is also revenue that's associated with the property through rental of some apartments that are currently, as Monica mentioned, sitting over the Equestrian Center, as well as some other properties. We'll consider all that in due course, but that is something where we're getting income right now. And that's here with this existing rental income, about $800,000, and you can see $430,000 net of expenses. We signed the contract on Monday, May 23rd, which is kind of just after that is where we are in this process right now. The approval deadline for this that's built into this contract is June 28th, and so it may feel like this is an accelerated timeline, and it is, and that's driven in part by these dates here and the requirements that we get this work done in time to meet those dates. So that's why you've got Board of Selectmen approval, which will be next week. Board of Finance meets right after that. There's then going to be an RTM discussion and an appropriation vote at that time, and then it would be all done in advance of this June 28th deadline. Importantly, though, there is a 75-day period after that until August 6th for the town to do further due diligence on the property. We have already done some environmental studies, as Monica mentioned, but that still gives us another 75 days to finalize that perspective and just make sure that we know exactly what we're buying. So that's sort of the basics of the contract and run through of the timeline at a fairly high level. I guess the only other thing I would say is that even though this feels quick, there are a lot of eyes on this project, right? People are paying very close attention to that. We've had a lot of very thoughtful people engaged in the contract process, a lot of people thinking about numbers, some of the best-in-class developers and landscape experts helping us take a look at all this. This is something that we're taking very, very seriously with a lot of very capable people looking at it today. So there are a few financial considerations. Obviously with $103 million, like any major project, we're going to have to finance that. The Board of Finance will consider that in due course, but it's going to be some form of bonding that they're going to do to pay for all this. And if you take a look, though, and we'll see some graphics on this in a minute, some folks have asked, well, so where does that put the town in terms of total debt load? If you add in the bonding that's going to be coming up, not been done yet, for this HHR, which is the Henley Holmes Royal Building Committee that's doing the roughly $75 million in improvements on the elementary schools today. You had all that debt, plus the debt that we would incur for Great Island, that would take our debt load up to about $243 million. In my time on the Board of Finance, I don't think we ever got north of $100 million, so it's a significant increase in debt. Right, I just want to be completely clear about that. So we're going to talk about the implications of that in a minute, but it's a lot of debt for this town. So with that debt, obviously comes debt service. And so if you look at what that would result in terms of incremental debt service, there's a lot of complexity around this number, and it's going to depend on how long we finance it for and the interest rate that we end up getting and a variety of other factors. But the zip code number it's about $7 million a year in incremental debt service. I'm going to go through kind of how to think about that number in a few minutes. So combined, if you look at all of that and think about sort of what the impact on the mill rate would be, right now we have a mill rate of about 17.2 mils, and that's going to take, to accommodate the debt service that I just described, it's going to take the mill rate up sort of 0.9 to 1 higher, so adding that to the 17.2. I'd also point out that this analysis does not take into account a ton of other things, right? So we know that there's a lot of commercial property development here in town that once it comes online is going to contribute significantly to our tax base. And so none of this takes that into account. I wanted to have sort of a pure presentation that just talks about Great Island. So just keep that in mind, that I'm trying not to take all that other thing and those other things into account. So in addition to this capital cost, I want to point out something here that's kind of unknown, but could be big. Okay, so once you buy this property, what do you have to spend once you buy it? And that's something that we're going to work through in time. The only thing I can say is that it's not zero. So sources of additional cost are going to be, to Monica's point, if we develop a four-season pool, or there's an ice rink, or some other things that could be kind of expensive. Four-season pool is going to cost a lot of money if we decide to do something like that. But we could end up spending a fair bit of money to develop this property. Those costs would be in addition to or incremental to what I'm describing here. I haven't been prescriptive about what I think that is. It's hard to say at this point. It's really going to require a community effort to make those decisions. But that's something that's going to be very transparent and inclusive in terms of how that's managed going forward, so that we can have an open public debate about what does that development need to look like? What's the balance between conservation and actual facilities? All of that sort of thing. That process will get us to an answer on this, but it's premature at this point to say exactly what that's going to cost. And then finally, as Monica pointed out in her presentation, we're fully expecting there to be a private support for the development of this island. We've already been engaged in some conversations with individuals who are prepared to make substantive contributions to all of that. So I would fully expect that even though this development here is going to cost some money, there's going to be a lot of private support to bring that about, which means, like some of our athletic fields here in town, the town's not going to have to bear all that cost itself. Okay. So there's a few bonding considerations, just in terms of timing. Even though the HHR, this Henley Holmes Royal building project, is currently underway, we're actually going to need to bond Great Island first, simply because that expenditure is going to have to be made right away once the due diligence period is finished, whereas the expenditures for HHR are going to be over time and bonded closer to the time when that money's actually spent. We may need to issue taxable debt. That shouldn't be too much of the total debt issue, but the reason you have to do that is if you have income generating property, and so you can't finance property that's income generating with tax exempt funding. So we would have to determine in advance what we're going to do with that income generating property and then structure the financing accordingly. For no points, interest rates are higher, in case anyone's noticed. We don't think, though, that that's going to hurt us a whole lot. As I would point out here, as Jim's indicated, those rates remain kind of well below historical levels. In other words, it could be certainly a lot worse. One of the issues that we thought about, and what we think is still ultimately fairly low risk, is what does that do to the town's AAA credit rating? So right now we've got AAA from Moody's, which we've had for a very long time. And the issue has been raised and questions asked about this level of debt load is that actually going to affect our town credit rating? I've talked to Jim about this and thought about it and talked to a few other people. Our assessment right now is that is unlikely. The reality is if you look at the tax base of this town and a number of other factors which we, Board of Finance presentations have presented publicly in the past, there's a lot that goes into determining that rating. And our sense is that given those other factors, from fund balance to the overall income levels of town, there's a whole long list of these things. My guess is that the chance is not zero, but I would put it at fairly low, that our credit rating would be reduced. But even in that case, let's say there was, I don't know what the list of reductions are depending on what your credit rating change is, but something of 10 to 30 basis points, that's not a lot. It's not a lot, even if we are knocked down a notch. I'm relatively confident that that's not going to happen. And then finally, I'm blind, I can't read all this. This debt service, one of the things that the Board of Finance can do is that it's not just deciding to bond a property. There's a lot that you can do to structure sort of the payments on that and the debt service on that. It can be all up front, well, not all up front, but level over a period of time, or you can adjust and change all of that, try to keep it level debt service for the town. That's something that the Board of Finance will think through when that time comes and then structure that appropriately. But that's one of the levers that we have to sort of manage and mitigate the effect of this debt service increase on the town. Okay. So this is a pro forma of sort of outstanding debt, and what we wanted to do here was just to give you a visual representation of what taking on this debt load means. Okay, so the gray bars that you see down here at the bottom is what I would describe as quote existing debt. So that's going to include the current town debt as well as the debt that we've already signed up for the HHR property. So this curve here that's in gray, you can see that with the HHR debt that we're going to be taking on as that project unfolds over the coming couple of years, that's going to take this debt up here and then pays out over time down here to 2044 or so. By the way, we never actually get to a curve that looks like this because there's always something we end up adding, but that just tells you what the current debt load is. So to borrow the $100 million for this, add $100 million to these bars, and so you can get a sense of kind of what that looks like, but how also that would pay out over time. And this is the peak debt point that I mentioned before, about $243 million. So not quite twice what we have right now with HHR included, but it certainly does increase the town's debt load. So let's take a look next at the pro forma debt service obligation. So I mentioned that before, and this sort of $7 million number here. So what you're seeing is the debt service, the way the Board of Finance has structured all this. The gray area is the debt service on existing debt. And so existing debt plus the HHR debt, so, but the debt that I would call debt we've all signed up for. In other words, that's all kind of baked in. The incremental debt would be these green bars here, and that would be the Great Island debt that we would take on. Again, the Board of Finance won't change, they'll bond the entire amount of the purchase, but what they have flexibility in doing is the height of these bars and sort of when we pay off things, and so they're in a position to structure that accordingly, but this is a straw man for how you might do that. And so what you see is that the initial debt service, where we're sitting here around in the sort of $10, $11 million zip code for annual debt service, that'll spike before it starts to come down over the course of, say, 8 to 10 years, upwards of $20 million. And so that's, kind of a 2x number, but that calms down to sort of what I would call a run rate increase of about $7 million, which is the heights of these bars versus the gray bars here. So that's where we get something that looks like kind of this $7 million number. I would point out further that that's going to take our debt service budget from around 6% of our total budget today to something to closer to 10%. I'll make a couple of comments in a minute about that, but my view of all this is that you look at $103 million, and that looks like a scary number. It's a big number, one that we've not actually encountered for in terms of a project size or debt load for the town. But my assessment of that from multiple angles, whether it's our impact on credit rating, or it's the amount of debt service that we have to pay incrementally, or any of that, this town, in my judgment, has plenty of capacity to support all this. As you'll see on the next slide, it's not something that we think is going to be overly onerous to the average taxpayer. So what this slide is an attempt to try to translate that $7 million into something that an average homeowner might feel. So What this is are the incremental taxes that are associated with the rise in that debt service. So let's say that you've got a $1.2 million home, it's the median home value in town, which would carry an assessment of, call it $850,000. The taxes on that house are in the zip code of about $14,800. To accommodate the rise in debt service, that's going to add about $665 to the annual tax bill for that house. Similarly, for a $3 million house that's paying in the $36,000 zip code for property taxes, that's going to add about $1,652 to the annual tax burden for that house. So in the scheme of things, is it unpleasant to pay these higher taxes? Absolutely. I do not like to pay higher taxes. I will pinch pennies until they scream. But in terms of something that's dramatic, like 2x or 40% higher taxes or any of that sort of thing, fake news. That is not true. The debt service load, in terms of the impact on the taxpayers, looks much closer to this. There's some other noise in these figures and things that we could consider, but directionally, this is the way that you should look at this in terms of what we might end up paying. And so my message on all this is that I think very clearly that the debt is a lot, right? It is a very manageable debt in the scheme of this town and what we can afford, and the way the credit agencies have looked at this town as a credit risk. I think the rise in debt service is something that we can mitigate, and the Board of Finance will shape to manage accordingly, and that the impact on individual taxpayers in town is something that, again, and nobody likes to pay additional taxes, but for what we're getting in terms of this island, seems to me to be something that's completely manageable. One thing Monica also mentioned is that it's not like we're investing all this and there's no value for this. The reality is that we're going to acquire a property like this. And by the way, if you've not been there, these are all very nice pictures. It does not do it justice. I'm telling you right now, to go see this property, it is stunning beyond words. I mean, there's just no place like it. And I've lived here for 17 years. I had just never been there. I'd actually go out and see the property. It really is quite remarkable. And I think with this visioning process that we're going to embark on, and as Monica said, this is going to be a very transparent and inclusive process. She's tried to seed some ideas out there with the help of the experts that are assisting us. But I think that process is going to yield something that everybody can be very enthusiastic about. So again, I think this will be something pretty exciting and great. I did want to just close by trying to answer some questions that Sarah Parent proposed. So a great town citizen, member of the Board of Education, she sent some questions just asking about this property that she wanted to get some answers to. And I think we've answered a lot of them, but they're so good that I just wanted to flip through them, and I know some others have received these questions just to make sure we've done them justice, but I thank her for sending that. How will this purchase be financed? I think we've talked about that. Individual tax bills and how much they will increase, we have talked about that. Impact on the mill rate, all of that. One of the things that she says here that I think is pretty important that we ought to address directly, will the Board of Finance and RTM still be able to prioritize education funding as they have in recent years? This is a very real concern for me and many other parents. There's a fear that adding this large expense will mean more nickel and diming of the Board of Education budget and going back to the world of value engineering from which we have thankfully moved away. As we all know, people move here for our schools. I'm looking for reassurance that education funding is still a top priority for the Board of Finance and RTM. From where I sit, I can tell you that there remains unequivocal support for that. Right? We moved here for the schools. A lot of you moved here for the schools. That's a very important town asset. In my judgment, the amount of debt that we're taking on for this does not diminish or take away from that priority at all. And so if you look at the track record that we've had in recent years in terms of adding debt for new schools, adding debt to do the school renovations that are currently underway, I've detected no loss of enthusiasm for making sure that we meet our education funding requirements for this town. Excellence in education is something that we all want for our children, and in no way should you perceive this project as taking away from that. That is not a zero-sum game. We are in a very, very good position to maintain both capital spending for schools as well as operational spending support for those schools. So you should take away from this presentation that this is going to be additive. This is not going to be something that impacts education funding going forward. She has some other very good questions about sort of what will this cost afterwards, not just the the dollars to develop the project, like I mentioned before, but what about just operational costs, right? How many people is it going to take in terms of staff members to run Great Island? What about security? Do we have to have extra police? Because it's a coastal property, you can take a boat right up there, and do we need to have security for all that? Those are valid concerns, and we're going to work through it. And again, that's a source of expense that is not zero. So we're going eyes open into this and taking that into account. We don't have an exact head count yet, and I think that'll be premature until we work through some of the development aspects of this, but I'm confident that we've taken it into account, and we'll be able to be more precise about that later. And then finally, she asked some other good questions about things like traffic studies around that, some of the areas that you saw there around Rings End and Long Neck, Pear Tree. We have not done those traffic studies, and again, just like Whole Foods when that was put in, you really have to have the development sort of formalized a bit before you can do a traffic study to say, okay, what are we really talking about here? And we will do that when the time comes. But these are the kind of questions that I welcome. So if you've got thoughtful questions like this and want to submit them for the Board of Selectmen to review, or the Board of Finance, or in any of the many public hearings we're going to have on all this, I absolutely encourage this. I want to make sure that everybody has a chance to say, to get their questions answered, and that nobody sees this property development and says, I never had a voice, I never had a chance to speak about this. That is absolutely something we're going to try to avoid. So thank you for your patience. I appreciate talking about this.
Thank you, John. That was very informative. So you've seen what the property looks like, and now you have a sense of what we might do with it. And the process for deciding among the various options is an important one, and I can assure you that it will be transparent and inclusive. We envision a working committee, perhaps modeled on the Waveney Conservancy or the Greenwich Point Conservancy, comprised of experts and residents. They will solicit input and prioritize the options, maybe some of the options that that were discussed, in public sessions that everyone will be welcome to attend. Thoughtful input will ensure that we end up with exactly the development we want with as much public support as possible. So once the acquisition is finalized, we will work to structure the committee and identify volunteers to join. Again, both the selection of the committee members and the development process they will follow will be open and transparent and inclusive. So I think what I'd like to do is, before we close, is just to say that I think we received a lot of information tonight, and it's very important that any questions we have, we get answered. So what I would like you to do is, if you could submit the questions for us, we will then accumulate them, and at the Thursday meeting, we will cover anything that we didn't cover tonight. Okay?
Because there's no board discussion about what we've seen at this point, we'll wait till Thursday. I don't want to step on the process. I just want to know what the next steps are.
Yeah, I think that's a good process, because I'm hoping that we'll all be there, right?
Yeah,
we'll
be
all
there.
Yeah. So
Okay.
I think that's a good.
Yeah, the only thing I would say is that if you or frankly anybody in the audience has a comment about this presentation that we just did, if there's something missing, or you felt like there was something that we could sharpen up, add, change, edit in some way to make the Thursday discussion, which is going to be a repeat of this presentation, better, we could discuss that now, or certainly talk about it later.
Yeah.
I thought the ideas were exciting. I like the approach. There's certainly a lot of different options. I think for my purposes, and maybe for some purposes of the people in the community, this is very good at telling us what gets us to the closing date, and if perhaps the potential expenses going forward could be more particularized, because while it may raise our taxes for a $1.2 million house, $665, that's assuming we do nothing else. That's assuming that we don't bond or have any other capital needs, as you quite accurately pointed out. So just an idea of, if we just secure it, if we just make sure that the roadways are good before we consider any of those wonderful options, what's that number approximately? I think that would be helpful to the community. Those are great ideas, but what's it really,
Yeah, that's a fair point. I think one of the questions I didn't address was Sarah brought up the point around exactly that issue, which is how much money are we talking about and what would be the incremental impact on a taxpayer of those expenditures. I think one way we could do it is to pick a few levels of expenditure from bare minimum, again, in a fact-free way, because we don't really know what bare minimum is, but to say for 10 million, 25, and say 50 million, just as a placeholder, what would that look like? And so you've got the acquisition cost and a few scenarios in terms of development costs and what that total debt load could look like.
Yes.
The only thing I would point out about that is that the development of this property is not going to be in August, right? It's going to be over the course of several years.
Sure.
And so the other thing about those expenditures is they're going to be layered in. And they could be layered in at a point when some of this debt service starts to drop a bit. So we don't really know. But as a placeholder, we could come up and say, here's 10, 25, and 50. And so all in, it could look like something like that. So we could do that.
I know I submitted questions last week. I know we can go into some of them further Thursday. That's fine. A couple quick questions on tonight. The numbers that you use for the impact on the individual homes, did that include the Hinley Homes and Royal, or is that based on the current debt?
So what we did is the taxes that you saw include the debt load that we've signed up for. So even though HHR is
So it
not
includes
in bond,
HHR.
So the basement, the HHR. So
Right.
the incremental cost I reserve, that's just Great Island.
Okay.
Just Great Island.
So just figured out, so it does not
the
include
14, that's like
HHR.
in that, I forget the numbers, but
Okay.
in the $1.2 million house, that
Right,
14,000,
yeah.
whatever, that number included all the HHR debt.
That is,
So
okay, perfect.
what I was trying to say is that this amount is just Great Island.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
Because HHR is, that ship has sailed, right? We're going to do that.
Well, but-
But Great
right.
Island, that's something we need to
So
add
the
on
answer
top
is yes,
of
it's in
Yeah.
there. Got it, perfect, thank you. I think, as Mike said, if we could talk about just a little bit about maybe some of the known expenses that we'll have the day after maybe we take ownership. What does it look like? We know we have to do maybe 2, 3 FTEs, I don't know. What does that cost? What does the insurance cost? What does that look like? I don't know. I mean,
Well, those numbers,
yeah.
Sarah, they're included in that net. So I think it's 431 is our net. That includes the current cost to run the project, to run that property now. It includes the three people that are working
Right.
there. It includes insurance. It
Right.
includes utilities. It includes maintenance costs.
Okay,
So
so,
as
okay.
that property stands now, it's income generating for, I believe it's 431,000.
So if we were to
Yeah, so
continue the
they-
renting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the
Okay.
800,000 zip
Right.
code and gross rents, the
Right.
net figure was, I can't remember, it's called 400,000, basically $400,000
Right.
in call it operating costs
Right,
for that.
and with including the
Is baked
insurance.
into those figures,
Perfect, thank you,
correct.
okay. And then maybe, can we talk a little bit about the equestrian facility? I mean, it's a phenomenal facility, and I don't know that it might have been in that arts and culture section. I wasn't sure kind of where it would fall. I don't know, kind of some thoughts maybe around that. It certainly, I think that's kind of been a window where some people have been able to have access to the facility over the years, and it's certainly phenomenal. Like, what does
It's
it look like?
gorgeous. It's beautiful, and I think it's definitely something to see. But I think that part of it, Sarah, that will go into what do we want to do there.
Well, so
And so
that's what I'm wondering, if
yeah,
anyone's
might-
had any thoughts about that.
Yeah, it might be premature to go through there.
Okay. Okay. So the rentals, that includes the horses right now for the stables?
That
Yeah,
includes the
It's all in, right?
the
It's all in?
stalls,
Yeah.
yes.
Yep, okay.
Yes.
And then I know 2 things. The driveway, is that an easement or is that part of the parcel? I couldn't remember that piece.
It's part of the parcel.
Perfect, okay. And then I know that there's the deeded open space. Is there any other part of the property that is not buildable, that is considered wetlands, or is there any
There's
other piece?
there's 0.4 acres of inland wetlands.
Perfect, okay.
Within the 60 that we're excluding that.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, so a little under half an acre. Yeah.
That's very small, thank you.
And I know we're doing a lot of studies. Will we have opportunity to read the results of those environmental studies or listen to exactly? I know that we're doing tremendous due diligence to make sure that we're aware of any potential pitfalls that could add expenses. Will we see the results of those
Yes.
studies?
Yes, we are doing, we did a phase 1, but the phase 2, I think it was really important, and so I asked to go ahead and get that done now, and that's looking at things like underground storage tanks, looking for any leakage there, environmental hazards. This property has been in one family for a very long time, so that's a huge concern for us. So there was radon test. There was very, very intensive testing last Friday, and we're looking for those results to get turned around as quick as we can.
Excellent, thank you.
So we do have the 75 days for the due diligence, but the heavy lifting for that will be done very, very soon.
I don't think we have anything else immediately. Nope, I'll send, thank you for answering those, and then I'll send an email.
Okay.
Thank you.
So do you think so I guess, okay, that's great that we did that. And then think about if there's, let us know, community, if there's anything else you think we should add to this presentation for people. Okay? Okay, so, well, let's just take one last look. Do we have somebody that?
Do you have a question?
Oh, Patrick.
Please.
Hi, Patrick.
Patrick Kane, 10 Pembroke Road. From the time that this property first came on the market in 2018, one of the concerns that ran through my mind was, good heavens, what if a developer gets this and tears it apart? Because it is a beautiful property. So I think one aspect that you might consider adding into your analysis is, what's the cost of not purchasing this, and the cost to the town? If there were, let's see, 10 to 19 plus, 19 to 57 potential hookups for that area, depending on what zoning is. So I think one aspect in terms of considering the pros and cons of purchasing this property ought to be, what if the town does not buy it? What potentially could happen to it? And what did those developers see in the just under 107 million that they could have done with it? Because I think that's from at least from my standpoint, that was always my concern, that somebody was going to come in and change the whole tone and tenor of that part of our town, and not for the better, I wouldn't think.
Okay, thanks, Patrick. Okay, so let's just take one last look at Great Island, and then we'll continue with the rest of our meeting.
Drones are really cool. I just make that point.
Okay, so that was Great Island. Terrific presentation and discussion, thank you. So next item on the agenda is to discuss and take action on a request to waive bidding requirements for the annual fireworks. And Pam Gary, our Director of Park and Rec, is here to cover it.
nothing as exciting as what we just saw, anyway. That was absolutely incredible. Yes, I'm here to get the support to waive the bidding. I will say that we did already go out to bid. A few things happened in our office. We had our program supervisor move along to a different town, and that left quite a big void for us at a really, really busy time in spring. So not only did we realize at the time in April that the bid had not been submitted, we still had to also determine whether or not our small office could handle it without this position. So Tamara, who's our new office administrator, stepped up to the plate, and we had a good conversation, and she said she would fill a lot of the responsibilities while Jamie was gone and while we were searching for another replacement. And we quickly got the bid together. We put it in early May with a bid opening of May 26, but we didn't get any bids. And in hindsight, I think that had we looked back on last year's and the previous bids, we didn't put in just 2 dates. So Jamie Gore had July 1st and 2nd as the event date and the rain date, and that's all we put in. So in previous years, we'd had 4 to 5 dates, which would really have opened the door for more possibilities for event companies. We did submit it, the bid, the RFP to 13 companies, and we still didn't get any. So when I did find out that, you know, the feeling of, really vast feeling of wanting to have this event, and how important it is to everybody to have this event, I did take it upon myself to start researching all the companies that we sent it out to, and was able to find the same company that we had last year, have a date available of July 15th and a rain date of July 16th, which was not any different than last year, which we had the fireworks on July 15th, but it was a Thursday last year, and a rain date of July 22nd, which we used. So with all the things that would have to change, the community band, the fire, the police, the school, all those things really didn't lead for us to rebid it, and that's why I'm requesting this. And I will tell you that we have secured all those things. So, you know, right now, as of July 15th works. We just need to make sure formally we ask the board if they would waive the bidding requirements for a second time.
What's the cost of this contract?
The cost of the contract last year was 20, and they, because of inflation, they're coming in at 23, which is really great, because we expected it to be a lot higher than that. We expected it to be at least 28 to 32, which was the original quote they had thought it would come back at, and they came back at 23, which is really phenomenal. So we're a little bit behind in terms of sponsorship, but I have been in touch with Dave Genovese. He's already put out some word to other sponsors from last year. We've already secured a sponsor from Compass for $2,500. We do have enough in the budget, from the firework budget, to, I mean, we look forward to the help with the sponsorships to keep that budget healthy, but with parking permits, with the fee of parking permits, we certainly will already raise some of that money to offset the budget as well. So, you know, we do have to pay attention because I believe we have 30,000 around there that we're starting with outside of getting the sponsorships. But, you know, everything is falling into place, which is we're very thankful for. But this is just part of the process that would help me continue to move forward.
So Pam, who's going to take care of this project going forward until the 15th? You? Mm-hmm. Okay. The 15th was what day of the week?
It's a Friday.
It's a Friday. Mm-hmm. And the rain date's Saturday?
Saturday. Mm-hmm.
And it's the same firm we had last year?
Yes. Okay. Which everyone was very, very, very pleased with last year. They put on a great show. It was a wonderful night. It was a Thursday, and I think the Friday would be even better. And I think it's all working out. It's all
Okay.
working out.
Any additional discussion?
This feels one-off. It's the same company. It's in the zip code of what we paid before. I'm okay with it, but as a general matter, we don't want to do this single bid contract, so I'm okay with this exception.
I'm with John on this, and this is just a one-time waiver, correct?
Right.
Sarah? All right.
But can I ask too, in the future, even had we bid it in early April, and a bid opening of April, end of April, and we received no bids, even if we rebid it, and then we came back with no bids again, is there a time at that point where we'd say, no one's bidding, we need to go out and actually call each individual and say, what works for you? Like, do you have any dates available? Because at one point, we will run out of time to do a second or a third.
Well, you know, July 4th is the same day every year, so I would say just start earlier. You know, do your RFPs earlier.
Or we just keep the schedule open and not choose dates.
Right.
'Cause I think that really
maybe
puts
give
them.
a little more, give a few more options.
Yep.
Right?
I highly doubt that will happen if we have the options in there, but I just.
Well, the other thing you might do is next year when this comes up, what would a 3-year contract look like? Right?
Mhm.
Could you get something that's cheaper? It's the same company. They've done a great job. Everybody's happy.
Yeah, that's a good
Put that
idea.
out for bid.
Mhm.
But then once you secure 3 to 5 years, I mean, it's not a gigantic amount of money, but to Monica's point, it's something we always have.
Right.
That way you don't have to do this at all.
Right. That's a
Right.
good idea.
We've
Yeah,
done the
there's-
2-year, but we
Yeah,
haven't done a 3
So
to
there's lots
5.
of ways to think about this. Like Monica's right, though, just bring it to our attention sooner if it looks like you're running to this same
Mhm.
turbulence again.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a good idea, though. You did a 2-year contract before?
Yes. Yeah. We always have it in the bidding requirement that if they did a good job, we can offer them an extension the following year. But we haven't done a 3 to 5.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Any other comments, Mars? No? You good? Okay. May I have a motion to approve the waive of the bidding requirements for the annual town fireworks? Mike moves. Marcy seconds. All in favor? It's unanimous. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pam. Okay, next item on the agenda is to review and approve the minutes of the May 16th, 2022 regular meeting. Are there any edits, additions, changes?
They both look good to me.
They both, okay. Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve? Mike moves. Marcy seconds. All in favor? Review and approve minutes of May 16th, the special meeting. Any edits, deletions?
It's just the executive session. so
No,
it's-
executive session. May I have a motion to approve? Mike moves. Marcy seconds, all in favor? Unanimous. Okay, thank you. Anything for the agenda of review?
I think, you know, we had been talking about an update on the project, on the,
Oh,
the
Jeremy,
yeah.
right, okay.
And I know we're somewhere in the process with the mission vision.
Right, we need a few comments from a few people, so we will push forward on that. And I think we had Jeremy's schedule and we canceled it for some reason, but yes. Okay, anything else?
Yeah, just an update on ARPA funding, so all those
Okay.
numbers. I sent out to Kate about this, but
Okay.
at some point, just to get a download on exactly where that stands with each amount in the commitment.
Okay. Yes, you did send that to Kate. Okay. Okay. Upcoming meetings, so there'll be a special meeting on Thursday, 7 o'clock. I hope I see all of you in the auditorium for a discussion on Great Island. And then our next meeting will be a special meeting for the Board of Selectmen next Monday, the 13th. And then our regular meeting will be June 20th. So if there's nothing else, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Monica, do you do public comment at the end, or?
We did public comment already.
Just on the meeting schedule, I just want to make 2 things where you guys, it sounds like you're going to meet on the 13th, we're going to try to do the 14th, we might need to do the 15th, we're just trying to juggle some schedules, so just keep you updated on that.
Okay.
We should know soon. And I think it would be great, I know there are a lot of questions that were asked tonight about, like, what would it cost, like, if we took it over and did nothing, but I'd love to hear, I think what our board would love to hear is kind of what all 5 of you sort of what some of your visions are. Like, what do you each think, like, would be your priorities in terms of developing that as you think about sort of passive or active use and so forth? So I think that would be helpful to kind of hear from all of you. So I think the ideas on the board were great.
Okay. Okay. All right. Any other comments? No? Okay. If there is nothing else to discuss, may I have a motion to adjourn? Marcy moves. Mike seconds. All in favor? Unanimous.